Hello, friends. Just wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up here that in this episode we did have an extremely hot mic that picked up everything going on around us. So we will obviously have that corrected for next week's episode. But here in this week's show, we're not able to rehash this one out. So we did the best we could do, get it touched up. But there is a lot going on behind us. So just bear with us this week, and we will check back with you in next week.
Hey, this is Nate Wells.
And this is Drew Cove.
Check out our podcast, that Go for Hockey podcast, for the latest news and updates on University of Minnesota hockey. You can find us on iTunes, and we're also on the Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
That's elite.
The Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
They may be drinkers, Robin, but they're also human beings.
Hell yeah, let's get Stinko.
Welcome, Giles and Boy Podcast. I am Giles Farrell. You can find me on Twitter at Giles Farrell. Across the table from me is Ben Remington.
Hello.
You can find him on Twitter at Ben Remington. You can find us over at the lovely website called zonecoverage.com. That is Zone Coverage MN on Twitter. Also, we do have a special promo code. It can make a great gift for that wonderful sports fan in your life this holiday season. Go to zonecoverage.com/subscribe. Punch in the promo code GATG20, Giles and the Goalie abbreviated, 20, to get a year's subscription at Zone Coverage for just $20. Gives you access to all of the website's content and helps prop up our otherwise fine production here. So do get that promo code checked out and punched in if you would be so kind.
Stocking
And that's
stuffer.
all. Yeah, there you go. Nice stocking stuffer as we get into the holiday season. Also, Ben had a lovely article this week kind of outlining great Minnesota hockey gift ideas for that hockey fan in your life. But before we get into the hockey portion of the show, Ben, we live in a world where Paul Bunyan's axe drink resides in the Twin Cities.
God bless America.
For those wondering why I said drink when I said Paul Bunyan's axe, I made a drinking game during Saturday's Gopher Wisconsin game where the trigger words Paul Bunyan's axe, 2003, 1994, 15 years were all words that triggered you to take a drink.
How did you survive?
I did survive.
Yeah.
It was great, and I watched the Gophers win in Madison. I can't believe it.
What a time to be alive.
It's wonderful, and I would have gone to the welcome home party for Gopher football as they returned late Saturday night, but I was not in town, so maybe in another 15 years.
Maybe they'll win the Axe at TCF someday, and that hasn't happened yet. So.
The exciting part is the Axe will be at the State Fair in 2019.
Oh, it's tremendous.
It'll be hanging over that bleak Gopher trophy case that has otherwise no football trophies
no Floyd,
in it.
No jug.
Where do you see Floyd? Where do you see Floyd at? Which fair?
It's a
Iowa
pig.
State.
Yeah.
I'm being trolled by the person next to me here at the table. This is unacceptable.
Wait. Isn't she a State fan?
Yeah, I am actually.
Jesus
So.
Christ. This is up.
Yeah. Right next to the Floyd of Rosedale at the Iowa State Fair, you can also find the less coveted Cyhawk trophy, which makes its permanent residence at that exhibit too.
It does.
They don't play anymore?
Yeah, every year.
Really?
Yeah, it pretty much goes one way.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
Iowa's football is kind of funny because they're gonna get exactly 9 wins every season. They'll never be ranked at the end of the season, but they'll always get 9 wins. They'll always beat teams they're supposed to beat.
Yep.
I guess that's how Kirk Ferentz gets like a lifetime contract or whatever he has right now.
1 year, Kirk Ferentz is great, cries Iowa fans. Next year, fire Kirk Ferentz, cries Iowa fans.
the same
Every
amount of
year,
wins.
me, fire Kirk Ferentz into the sun.
Oh, it'd be nice. He waves at kids.
That's the best part of the game is when she just rolls her eyes at that. Anyway, enough about Gopher football. I had to note that the Paul Bunyan's axe was back in the Twin Cities. It's a momentous thing. And anyway, speaking of momentous, the Minnesota Wild had a rather momentous week in their schedule as they played just a pair of games. As they went over the Thanksgiving holiday, Wednesday night, the Wild host the Ottawa Senators, and they win 6-4 over the Ottawa Senators, brought to you by Uber. Jordan Greenway, Matthew Dumba on the power play, and Eric Stahl on the power play get the Minnesota Wild out to a 3-0 lead. Chris Tierney gets Ottawa on the board, then another Matt Dumba goal, which he just absolutely unleashed a howitzer for his 10th goal of the season. But then the Ottawa Senators get 3 unanswered goals to start the third period. Devin Dubnyk is pulled in favor of Alex Stalock. But then an Eric Stahl goal with less than 6 minutes to play on an Eric Fear empty net goal seals the win for the Minnesota Wild to get them the 6-4 win over the Ottawa Senators, again brought to you by Uber. Then we have the lovely Thanksgiving holiday where we got to fill up on our favorite foods. Ben, did you enjoy the cranberries?
I did. So we actually didn't go anywhere for Thanksgiving, which was kind of nice. We stayed at home and Roz made a bunch of food and had the 2 varieties of cranberries at our house because she just can't get with the program and stop eating all the stems and sticks and all the disgusting aspects of cranberries that shouldn't be eaten.
The best part was nobody was really eating cranberries at my gathering, so I just kept putting them on the plate. It was great.
Nothing wrong with some jellied cranberries.
Anyway, since there was no National Hockey League's game to be played on Thursday, which is weird because they definitely play over the Canadian Thanksgiving holiday.
Right?
The Minnesota Wild returned to action on Friday in their typical Friday matinee game on Black Friday. They hosted the Winnipeg Jets at XL Energy Center. Their first meeting since the playoffs last April. Patrick Laine, Nick Ehlers get the Jets up 2-0 at the second intermission. But then one Nino Niederreiter gets the Wild on the board against a otherwise great Connor Hellebuck in this hockey game. Then Eric Fear, Eric Stahl, and Zach Parise with an empty net goal seal the Minnesota Wild 4-2 win in regulation in what was an otherwise great third period from the Minnesota Wild, where they just absolutely blasted the Jets, puns intended, to hold second place in the Central Division here as we recorded, and then they get another nice 4-day break.
Yeah, the game was a lot of fun to watch. Even off in the first period, it was interesting because it was kind of back and forth, and you felt like maybe the Wild were hanging in this game a little bit. And then Laine scores, and then Ehlers scores, and you kind of get the here we go again kind of feeling in the second period. And so then the Wild, to their credit, really got their legs under them and made one hell of a comeback there in the third period. So that was a lot of fun to watch.
Had a good old-fashioned bench brawl. No,
that
okay,
too.
maybe not old-fashioned.
Yeah, it wasn't
but,
old-fashioned.
You get that's as close to a brawl as you get.
Who opened that door anyway? Who just
the Jets were in the middle of a line change.
Into their bench.
And then Adam Lowry just shoves Nick Seeler right into the bench. Marcus Foligno comes to his rescue and pushing
Greenway
and shoving.
was heavily involved as well. It was some good fun. I enjoy watching Nick Seeler kind of fly off the handle once in a while. It's good entertainment.
Also in this game, Greg Patterin gets his first assist, his first point in the Minnesota Wild, and I had to fact check this because the Wild Twitter account said that was his first point with the Wild this season, and I said, BS. That's not possible. He's played so well. He's had to have had a point before.
No,
I did confirm that was Greg Pattern's first point of the season.
It is a little baffling because he's been so rock solid, and it seems like his pair, his partner Nick Seeler, has done a little bit of scoring here and there. Like, he's not completely inept offensively, but for some reason Greg Pattern has not been involved in the offense whatsoever. Not really that big of a concern. Nothing to lament, I don't think. If you're looking at Pattern in that respect, I mean, it's just kind of as I mentioned, it's more weird than anything. It's not like anything damning against Pattern. It's just more weird that he hasn't gotten assist by sheer luck alone.
Yeah, I think it's just unfortunate that he hasn't yet, considering how great his play has been for a third pair this season, and really nobody's talking about his contract length anymore. We maybe noted at the beginning of the year was concerning that a third pair defenseman gets a 3-year deal. The AAV might not be too bad, but it's one of those deals probably where it takes a little less AAV for an extra year on the deal. But no complaints here, as he's been very good on the back end. But just had to note that it's just so damn weird that was his first point of the year. When you he should have a few by now.
Yeah. I mean, if you can make the Wild not go back to Nate Prosser, that's an accomplishment for the third pair.
That's a testament to that third pair in itself. Nate Prosser has not been required.
Yeah.
Didn't they send him to Iowa for like a conditioning stint?
Yeah, because he played like 4 minutes this year. He's getting Tom Thibodeau bench minutes.
The Josh Okogie Memorial seat.
You have till August to do that. So now it's time to just lay the cards.
So anyway, as we record here on Sunday afternoon, the Minnesota Wild are holders of second place in the NHL Central Division. They are at 30 points behind the Nashville Predators, who have 33 points. The Colorado Avalanche have snuck up here as well, tied with the Wild, 30 points, but we'll come back to that a little bit later. And something else to kind of go over here is we are at that Thanksgiving benchmark that everyone really knows about in the National Hockey League, where if you're in a playoff spot at Thanksgiving, or if you're out of a playoff spot at Thanksgiving, the odds are you're going to be staying in that spot, really. Unless you're on the fringe, then you still have a chance. But if you're kind of firmly in one place, then you are, and that's where the Wild are. They are at, like I said, they're at 30 points, and they are second best team in the Western Conference. And typically, those teams, unless you're the 2011-12 Mike Yeo run Minnesota Wild, you're not going to nosedive out of a playoff spot at this point.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing that they're in that spot because we've seen so much inconsistency out of this team, and just in how they've played in general. It's kind of they've had to have the goalies kind of bail them out, and they've also had some good play in front of maybe some not so hot goaltending. So it's all very important. It's all a good thing that they can get in this spot because that's kind of what the focus is still. Even though this team kind of laughed themselves out of the playoffs last year. The goal is still to get back to the playoffs and then kind of roll the dice and see what happens because, as we know, the playoffs are I would crapshoot. So it's just kind of getting there. That's the key. So it's great they're in a good position and they've been playing well in overtime.
Well, that's a good thought.
Do you believe they can hold on to second place in the Central Division, or do you think there is a little bit of regression that'll come and they'll still have a playoff spot, but they won't have home ice advantage in the first round? Should we do one of those cheesy buy or sell segments where you buy or sell that?
I don't. I don't think they end up second. I think they probably do slip to third, or perhaps even a wild card spot. Even though they just beat the Jets on Friday, we saw how talented that Jets team is, and counting on them to not, end up better than the Wild in the season is maybe a little bit of fun. So, I don't know. I still think the Jets kind of pass up at some point. I don't think they go much further than third. I don't think this team is a very narrowly makes the playoff kind of team unless something drastic happens, like injury to somebody very important. But if they can kind of stay the course and end up around that second or third spot, it's interesting. You just kind of maybe hope and pray they don't end up playing in Winnipeg again in the first round of the playoffs, because that didn't go well last time.
And that was a very heated contest for just your first meeting of the season between the Wild and Jets. So by the time they get to the playoffs, you have to think there'd be a little bit more bad blood, and you have maybe a little bit more heated series between the two. But I also did look ahead because I was curious after Friday's game, because, it just all goes right to my head when the Wild beat a good team like the Jets. When the next time the Wild get the Nashville Predators, and for those of you curious, that's not till March, where all 3 remaining games between the Wild and Predators take place in the month of March. Gotta love those schedule makers.
Yeah, I know scheduling is hard. Like, I get it. I've done a lot of scheduling, just in my professional life and all that jazz. But it can't be that hard. Like, why is it that it's set up like that? I get that they want more divisional matchups to be able to stuff. I totally get that. But all of them, like every one of their matchups should be, that just seems like it's a bit much to me. Especially for 2 teams that aren't that far apart.
Right. It stinks for those who maybe would like to go to Nashville for those who love to road trip with the Wild. But anyway, so I don't know. I think they can. I think they can hold on to second. I know at the beginning of the year I made the bold prediction of the Wild will miss the playoffs this year. I think we can all fully agree that prediction has sunk faster than the Titanic did them years ago. But I think they can hold on to it. I think we've seen Bruce Boudreau kind of manage the ebbs and flows of this team during the regular season to where, it would take a pretty significant kind of a swoon to make them lose the spot. And, the Avs, who are right with the Wild right now, they've got hot, but they were not overly consistent to begin the year. The Jets have not been horribly consistent to begin the year. Anyone else chasing them in the Central Division, not consistent here to begin the year, or they're just bad.
Yeah.
Like the Blackhawks and the Blues. And I think it would be very key for them to hold on to second place in the Central Division. And I think maybe the players do realize that having home ice in the first round of the playoffs is key, even though the one time here in the Parise Suter era that they did have it, they really took a dump on the bed.
Well, yeah, and that's going to happen. Nobody can predict Jake Allen suddenly becoming prime down the contract.
Maybe Craig Berube can look into his crystal ball and tell us.
But I think to your point, and even if they get home ice advantage, I think that you saw on Friday just in how the Wild were able to play with the Jets, how different this Wild team is with Ryan Suter and with a healthy Jared Spurgeon.
Yeah, that was a big point Russo drove home in his post-game article, was how the Wild were a lot more evenly matched with Winnipeg when they're at full health, and he cited, no Suter, Jared Spurgeon at 50%, and then Zach Parise missing the last 2 games of that playoff series. It makes a huge difference. And honestly, in the third period, the Wild found a gear that I honestly can't recall them having in quite some time against the Jets, which is why they put a 4 spot on the Jets in that third period. They were very, very aggressive in a very good way, and that's why they got the W, and the Jets did not. They dug deep and completely blown away by the gear that they had in that third period. This is an old team, and they don't look old at all.
Yeah, I think that they're, they came to play against the Jets. I'm not going to say they didn't, but maybe it was something where they fell down a couple of goals to the Jets, and instead of getting that "here we go again" feeling, it just kind of rattled. It just kind of rattled the cage a little bit, as far as they remember what it was like last season to get thoroughly stomped by the Jets in 5 games. I mean, thoroughly stomped.
you did have to wince a little bit when Devin Dubnyk was announced as out prior to the game with an illness. So Alex Stalock, who had an 808 save percentage in 2 starts against the Jets last year, was sprung into action. And he did very well. The second goal to, I believe it was Ehlers, where he just kicked the rebound right out to him. Or maybe that was a lining goal, whatever it was. Not great, but that was the lining goal. Because then the Ehlers goal was where he used the defenseman as a screen.
Yep.
And, he did make some good saves in the first and second, even the third period, to keep the Jets off the board, and you can't fault them for those 2 goals. So that perfectly segues into the next topic, because it's not the Giles and the Goalie podcast without a wonderful goalie debate. As I tweeted out on Saturday morning, the Minnesota Wild goaltenders' save percentage in the month of November. And now, to give a point of reference, Devin Dubnyk has 8 starts. Alex Stalock has 4.
Right. Sample size.
Small sample size for Alex Stalock, but
The 4 starts or 4 games? They count the release period?
That might have been 4 games.
3 starts.
I always forget to look one over on Hockey Reference when I'm looking up the stats, because they have games played and then games started.
Yeah.
But anyway, the goaltender save percentage in the month of November: Devin Dubnyk 896, Alex Stalock 935, and that did catch your attention. And then I replied to you, I'll say it, Alex Stalock should start on Tuesday, because I think you should maybe ride his decent play out a little bit.
I'm fine with that. I just don't think that that's something that you can do long term or even sporadically throughout the season. I don't know. I'm not a huge Stalock fan, and everyone kind of knows that at this point. But I think he can, if he can play well. He obviously played well on Friday. If he can play well like he did on Friday for Tuesday, sure, I'm all for it. Devin Dubnyk was sick enough on Saturday to not even show up at the arena, so there's certainly a chance that he's not 100% still. So I don't take any issue with that. I don't know that Stalock is a guy that you ride. I don't know that it becomes a 1A, 1B type situation. I don't think that's ever the case.
No, I don't think of it more of as a 1A, 1B kind of a thing, like a Rolison Fernandez tandem for those who remember way back in the day. But I think it's more of a, maybe you should kind of ride out his hot play a little bit and give Dubnyk a few more nights off, because I'm still going to push this button. I've been pushing this button for many years, so why would I stop now? But just to keep Devin Dubnyk fresh for when you need him most in, say, March and April and beyond, giving him a few more nights off in November, December, January can be very, very beneficial to your goaltender, especially as his age continues to go up, not down.
Right. Yeah, to your point, Dubnyk had some time off last December when he had a little injury, and Stalock stepped in and did an okay job. And, it's tough to say that kept Dubnyk fresh, but Dubnyk was the best player on the ice for the Wild in the first probably 3 games of the series against Winnipeg. His overall numbers didn't end up looking very well because the team kind of fell apart on him, and he kind of fell apart a little bit in the last 2 games. But yeah, there's something to be said for that. I have no issue with him being fresh. It makes a lot of sense, and so yeah, if you can get Stalock on these hot streaks, and go for it, because Dubnyk is, as we've well documented numerous times, a very inconsistent goalie too. He's going to have months like this where he keeps below 900, but that's also juxtaposed with his month of October, where I think he was around the 950 mark. So it's really ridiculous how wildly inconsistent Dubnyk is, and Stalock kind of is too. Stalock was pretty terrible in October in his handful of starts. And so, yeah, riding the hot hand, probably not a terrible idea.
And that's not to say Devin Dubnyk still isn't having a good year. It just kind of shows, and you pointed out how great his October was.
Right.
And I think we get, as Wild fans and those of us who try to cover the team, I think we get a little bit spoiled when he does go on those incredible runs where he's posting save percentages up over 940, and then he does have stretches like this where he does come back to the norm a little bit, you're just kind of like, oh, what's going on? What's wrong with him? Is he hurt? What's his deal? And I don't know. You just kind of have to put it all into perspective. But
I think it's just a regression. It's just I don't think that there's, to your point, I don't think there's anything wrong with him. I just think that you're going to get that kind of out of him sometimes, and also you got to remember that the team in front of him has a big thing to do with that too. I feel like in the last month, maybe they have been a little bit more aggressive. You've seen this team play, maybe a little bit faster, and so they've taken a little more chances, and that might have affected them as well. So, that save percentage is obviously not good for the month of November, being 896, but there's a lot that goes into that. And so that's important to remember as well. Is that save percentage is he's usually pinned on the goalie, but there's a lot of factors, just like ERA for a starting pitcher.
And it's also kind of like you take a game like the Ottawa game on Wednesday where the goals were not really his fault. It was the team in front of him, and then all of a sudden, just a huge swing of momentum, and Bruce Boudreau has to pull Dubnyk, and not a good look when you just read the box score and see Dubnyk gets pulled, but it was more of a momentum switch for the game, and that was the right thing to do right there in that spot. And I don't think we really give enough credit to Bruce Boudreau maybe for doing that, because I don't know if maybe some previous Wild head coaches might not have done that. They would have just rode that one out, and it wouldn't have been that favorable a result, I don't think.
I don't know if Dubnyk was shook necessarily in that game, but it definitely was a good...
Hashtag shook.
It definitely was a good move by Boudreau to kind of halt things a little bit. I mean, when you get your goalie pulled, and like we said, and I'm sure Boudreau will be the first to tell you, those goals weren't 100% on Devin Dubnyk. There was a lot of sloppy defense playing that game. That's what happens when you play the Senators, because they kind of got into playing the Senators game a little bit, and a lot of fire wagon hockey, and Lord knows the Senators can't stop anybody. So when you play their game, it's tough to keep up and play defense at the same time. So that's just kind of the game they fell into. But it was a great momentum shift. Nothing is a slap in the face to the skaters out front as getting your goalie pulled from the game because of your defense. So it's just kind of it was a good move, and maybe not enough credit for Boudreau.
Excuse us, that's the Ottawa Senators, brought to you by Uber.
I hope their new downtown Ottawa arena is Uber Arena.
Well, that's more in the toilet now than their sponsorship with Uber.
Oh, no, I know that, but I'm just saying, that would be really funny if they got a downtown arena, which obviously as long as Eugene Melnyk owns a team that's not
Uber
happening.
Center. And remember last week I said on the show the Ottawa Senators had gone like a week and a half before anything came out about them being a tire fire in a new light. And sure enough, during the last week, Eugene Melnyk came through for us with his LeBreton Flats deal that now he's suing the other guy because he's apparently full of himself. So but anyway, we're not an Ottawa Senators podcast, so we won't get too much into their politics.
It is funny, though.
I did call that.
It's hilarious.
Although that's easy to call.
Yeah,
I'm still going to pat myself on the back. You got to take the small victories, folks.
Predicting Eugene Melnyk meltdowns is not really that hard, to be honest.
Nope. All right. Hey, speaking of meltdowns, let's get over to the Bruce Boudreau quote of the week. Not that there really is a meltdown, but there could be. You never know. Anyway, here we go.
Hi, this is Bruce Boudreau. I don't see how in Toronto that they're calling it, unless it's a guy they just pulled in off the street that hasn't seen hockey before.
If I were the fans, I'd be booing even more, because that, they pay good money for this.
If you want it, don't just think you want it. Go out and f***ing want it.
All right, the Bruce Boudreau quote of the week comes after Friday's game against the Jets. The head coach was asked about not playing the next game against Winnipeg until next month, as opposed to maybe more recently after the heated display we saw between the two teams on Friday. And the head coach replied with, "If we were playing them Wednesday or something, it might be a real barn burner."
That game did get really heated. We talked about it briefly with the men's ball. You could tell that there was a lot of bad blood in the playoffs still, and that's good. I mean, it's a good rivalry to start. I think if these two franchises can get a rivalry going, given their proximity, that's a good thing for the whole franchise.
And that quote came after he had called the game a little more of the old-time hockey kind of style that you maybe saw in the 80s that we're going to get to a little later. But do you still get the warm and fuzzies when the old-time hockey comes out, like the good old pushing and shoving into the benches, the face washes, the occasional fight? Does that get you all warm and jolly below decks?
Oh yeah, for sure. You know, and I know that there's some folks out there that probably throw up in their mouth a little bit as soon as they see some physical violence between two hockey players. But I think it's great, and it's going to happen. We see it in every sport. You see it all the time everywhere. You know, you have people competing at this high of a level, and you have things that mean this much. That's what you're going to get, and it's a good thing. I think it's a great thing to see as a fan because it means that the players care. You know, that whole bench brawl came from a just absolutely idiotic elbow on Joel Eriksson Ek. And there's no reason why that kind of stuff should go unpunished. Nick Seeler has every reason to be upset about that kind of hit. I mean, it's taking liberties with your teammates and standing up for it is a great thing. And you know, we can debate until the cows come home about fighting in the NHL. But, you know, the rough stuff, fighting or otherwise, is going to be there, you know, as long as there's going to be, you know, peak athletes who feel some semblance of camaraderie with their teammates.
You can never get rid of fighting altogether, and more of the staged crap I really hate.
Sure.
But, you know, I think kind of like the heat of the moment kind of stuff from two teams that generally don't like each other that I'm a little more on board with, but I'm not incensed like some people out there entirely by it.
I mean, I get that any kind of violence or fighting isn't everyone's cup of tea, but it's such a minuscule when you divide it out. It's such a minuscule part of hockey. When, you know, especially now, you know, compared to the 80s and 90s, like there's really not much to complain about anymore. It's really silly to get that upset.
Do you love a good cup of tea? I've never. You use that expression all the time.
No, so I worked at a coffee shop, as we talked about, very, very part-time.
Years past.
Yeah. And I literally would call tea dirty water, because that's what it is. It's just dirty water. You get water, you make it dirty, and then people drink it. And that's supposed to be some kind of refreshing beverage. I don't understand it.
Please stop talking poorly about my cup of Earl Grey.
I do also realize that coffee is a similar thing, but at least coffee has like some semblance of flavor, and I can kind of party with coffee. Tea, not at all.
I do love a cup of Earl Grey.
Yeah?
Yeah. Why, do you ask? Because that is Jean-Luc Picard, a drink of choice.
Do you drink it when you have to wake up in the morning to watch your English soccer matches?
No.
Are you trying to feel more British child?
I actually just drink coffee, and then if I'm watching with friends, it's Guinness.
Oh, well, that's acceptable.
Guinness at 9 a.m. is delightful.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's a chewy breakfast drink.
Getting up and watching soccer at 9 a.m. is also delightful. So,
whatever you tell yourself, you're not convincing me.
The 6:31, I'll argue, but 9 a.m. it's okay. Anyway, we've really gone off on a tangent here. Anyway, that's your Bruce Boudreau quote of the week. Now we will fire over into our Pearl Watch.
Kaprizov across, look at the set. Kaprizov shoots and he scores! He scores! The Russians are golden in South Korea.
Pro Kaprizov, checking in on him. He just played in, looks like just 3 games, I believe, in this last week with CSKA Moscow. No points for the Wild. Stud prospect. And really nothing to highlight, really. When you don't have any points, you can't highlight anything, and he's not really in the news right now. So
he blew the wad with the hat trick last week.
Blew the wad.
He was too busy showing off for Paul Fenton, and now that Paul
he
Fenton's
had to put on a show now that Paul Fenton's back here watching the Wild. He's going to go back into the rabbit hole for a little bit.
Well, we also know that CSKA Moscow is an insanely deep team, and they were giving Kaprizov, who's a top-flight KHL player, they were giving him days off just because last season. That's how stacked this team is. I mean, they're really. We don't have a good comparison to it in the States as to how ridiculously talented this team is. It's kind of like, I guess it's kind of like the NBA, where you've got the Golden State Warriors, you've got some of LeBron's teams, the Spurs. They would just give guys the night off. It's like, hey, take a night off. We don't need you tonight. Like, if we lose, whatever, no big deal. We're going to the playoffs. But take a night off. And so that's just how bizarre that league really is.
Does Kirill Kaprizov just have verbal altercations during timeouts with Anton Slepyshev, like Durant and Draymond Green do?
No, I don't. I think that the Russians are probably a little more obedient than that. I get the feeling that over there they're very conscious of following orders and such.
They just settle it over a pint of vodka.
Yeah, that's too. Yeah, that's lots of vodka.
Ben, did we have another prospect we wanted to highlight this week?
We do. One that actually made his pseudo-Wild debut on Friday. He rode the pine, but he did a fine job at it. Capo Kakinen, who was signed over from Finland this year to play for the Iowa Wild and has had a spectacular year so far in tandem with Andrew Hammond.
Oh my God!
He started 7 games. He's got a 1.12 goals allowed average, which is silly, and a .962 save percentage, which is almost even more so. So he's really had a fine year. He got the emergency call up with Nick ill on Friday, not even going to the arena. Obviously, that's a relatively short trip of 35 days. But it is interesting, and Walls brought up even during the game that this organization hasn't done a ton of developing goals. And he's one of the, feels like one of the first ones that they actually drafted and kind of watched a little bit, and now he's in the system and could turn out to be maybe a good goalie down the line. I don't think that he's going to be, future Vezina winner or anything crazy like that, but you never know. Goalies are such late bloomers. It's really impossible to tell. When you look at a guy like Henrik Lundqvist, what was he, like a 6th round pick? Pekka Rinne, I believe, was a 7th round pick. So it's really tough to tell. I mean, he's certainly tearing it up in Iowa, and that's a great thing. The team's getting great goaltending, so really excited about him. At worst, it gives him a nice option for a backup goaltender next year or even the following season. Depending on what the life cycle is on Alex Stalock and or Andrew Hammond.
2 things. One, it feels like a short drive, but is it though?
I know it's
once you cross the border into Minnesota, then it's a breeze.
Yeah.
But up until the border, then you're just like, And especially now that they're empty this time of year, because the harvest season has passed. Yeah, it's just there's nothing.
Yeah.
Literally,
nothing. No, I've made that trip all the way through Iowa a couple of times down to Missouri, and that's a brutal drive.
And second, it is very promising to see Kakinen doing very well in Iowa. Really, at that point, he's really the only goaltending prospect that they have, imminent and, could be maybe a decent backup option one day down the road. But you never know. Goalies are really weird and hard to predict. So you don't know what you're going to get.
It takes a special kind of mindset, and I think that just goes to show how much of the goaltender game, how fine it is, not only physically but mentally as well. When you see some of these late bloomers, Capo Kakinen could be a Vezina winner. he also could not ever appear in an NHL game. I mean, that's really the range of outcomes for the goaltending process. It's so crazy. It's not like a prospect like a Kyle Rao, where it's like Kyle Rao's never going to win this. Could he be a nice third line guy for you at some point? Maybe. Sure, maybe. But it's not the range of outcomes that you
All right. On over to our Central Intelligence report.
Central Intelligence.
Yeah, I've been scoreboard watching since opening night. So, I don't know if that counts or anything, but I think hockey players are hockey players, and they want to see where they are, and they know how close everything is. They know that every game is vital.
So as I alluded to earlier in the show, the Central Division getting a little stacked up towards the top. As mentioned, Nashville Predators still leading with 33 points. But they did take one on the teeth against the St. Louis Blues on Friday night, 6-2.
Yeah.
Good Lord. Weird. And then you have the Wild at 30 points, and then tied with them is Colorado Avalanche at 30 points, who have won 4 in a row and are just absolutely buzzing. They had a nice come-from-behind win against Dallas on Saturday night. Then you have the Jets at 28 points. And they just absolutely took a blowtorch to the Blues on Saturday after their loss to the Wild, 8-4. Patrick Laine had 5 goals. He's the first player in the history of the NHL to score a hat trick on 3 different countries in a season: Canada, the U.S., and Finland. And then I believe he's also had some insane number of goals in the last week, 9 or 10 or something like that. It's just outrageous. So Patrick Laine playing very well up to the league leading goals this year. Then you got the Dallas Stars, who are still just kind of floundering around. They're at 26 points, but that would be the holder of the last wild card spot in the Western Conference.
Really?
Yeah, because the Pacific Division has 2 teams in third place tied with 25, Anaheim, Vegas, then Vancouver at 24. But once it's 1, 2, 3, then you're at 4th and below. So, yeah, the Dallas Stars would be the last wild card team, and they would be I can't even fathom that. But anyway, then you got the Blackhawks, who are at 23 points, and then the St. Louis Blues at 19 points. And those 2 teams at the bottom. It feels like they should be a lot further away than what they actually are, but that's where the Central Division is at. And Colorado's catching fire here. They kind of snuck up here in the last week on the Wild. Now they're right on their heels, and giving the Wild a challenge here. Like I said, I don't know if it's entirely sustainable for the Colorado Avalanche to maybe stay with where they're at, but kind of from what I've been reading on them, they're really kind of maturing with their young core. So maybe that's a battle for the second spot, as we talked about, the Thanksgiving benchmark, and if the Wild can hang on to that second place. But next showdown between the Wild and the Colorado Avalanche does not come until January 23rd, which is right after our trip to Vegas, which is inching ever so close.
I purchased my tickets. I haven't told you that yet. I bent over and purchased tickets. My God.
Yeah, I can't wait to do that.
Yeah. Anyway, it's interesting. Colorado is an interesting team because they're kind of one line, but one insanely good line. And, Varlamov and Grubauer are kind of, hot and cold, and then that's kind of been the ebb and flow of their team. But I don't know. I don't really fear them all that much from Wild standpoint, because it shouldn't be, and the caveat there is that not a lot of people have been able to shut them down, but if you want to beat them, you really have to do everything in your power to take that one line out. And they're not a very deep team, and so that's kind of that's kind of the thing with the Avs. one thing that we haven't talked about, that we alluded to on our last week's podcast, is now the St. Louis Fighting Groupies versus the St. Louis Fighting Yos.
That came in 90 bloody minutes after we finished recording.
We finished recording and literally happened that very same night. So that's interesting, and to a lesser extent, Todd McCullough fired by the Oilers.
Where did Ken Hitchcock come from?
He's like the Undertaker, just rising from the grave all the time to coach another team. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, he's Paul Bearer. That's
just like from one of those horror movies where it just deadpans to a gravestone, and all of a sudden you just see a hand come from out beyond the grave. That's Ken Hitchcock. Every second year.
A hand with a polyester suit sleeve attached. It's kind of, I don't know. So we talked very briefly about Yo's future or lack thereof with the Blues last week.
We really did.
Obviously, neither one of us are surprised by that firing, but what are your thoughts on it? I mean, Yo is obviously a very well-known guy, very well-liked in this area, especially by those who covered the team. And I know Russo kind of went on a rant a little bit on his podcast about that situation. What do you think?
I don't know, I don't doubt that Mike Yeo is a good guy, but I do wonder if he is going to be a coach again, especially with kind of the youth movement we're seeing from some teams in the league where they're looking, at AHL coaches or, college coaches instead of just, the retread guys. But I'm sure there's a team out there that would probably love to give him a shot again at some point, but I don't know. I just feel like he just kind of had a flash in the pan moment with the Blues that first year after Hitch was fired, and it's just really not good sense. And I think I'm going to defend him here a little bit and say that team has more to do with the general manager's problems than Mike Yo's problems. And I think he was given a poor goaltender to have to lean on. And so I guess just maybe for his sake, I would like to see him get one last chance at a head coach in the league, but I do wonder if he's going to get that chance in the league again. And I think maybe he's more suited as an assistant, because some of the same things we saw in Minnesota did start to crop up in St. Louis, where he did lean on his veterans a little bit too much. So I don't know, it's a coin flip, but that's what I got on that.
Did he play as number one defenseman 35 minutes a night too?
I don't know.
Probably. I'm with you on that. I've never been a huge Yo fan versus some of the folks who came before us in writing and blogging that were able to deal with him more personally. To your point, I don't think he's that good of a coach. I mean, is he probably a decent guy to fill in as an interim coach? And like you said, is he probably a good assistant coach? Obviously, he knows the game, and he has a following because he's such a great guy, and the players seem to like him well enough. I think also another big thing is his system was such a suffocating style, not only defensively, but it seemed like to his offensive stars as well. I mean, Vladimir Tarasenko is still going to score goals because he's Vladimir Tarasenko, but we saw literally...
Who also had a little bit of a disappearing act this year.
Yeah, exactly. But, to your point, we saw the players, as soon as Yo was gone, under John Torchetti and then obviously very much under Bruce Boudreau, would take a spike up in their point production. Mikael Granlund became the Mikael Granlund who we know and love now after Yo left. And so there's something to be said for all of that, I feel like. He's kind of... I don't want to paint him as though he's stuck in the clutch and grab 90s or anything like that, but his system is so conservative that I just don't know that it works in today's NHL anymore.
In a league that's becoming more and more aggressive.
Right. And so I think he will get a head coaching position again, but it's probably going to be a while. It's probably going to be a year or 2 or 3 or 4 even. And
he'll probably have to be somebody's assistant again.
Right, and I don't know that there's going to be a whole lot of fanfare around it when he's hired by somebody, and his next head coaching position could very well end up being an interim spot, just like kind of how we saw him. He was the coach waiting under Hitch, but still, it was kind of the same situation.
It's another fascinating trend in the league. It's just the interim coach appointee
Yeah.
And that, St. Louis has Craig Berube as interim coach for this year. Los Angeles has Wooly Desjardins as the interim coach this year. And, Chicago has not given their guy an interim tag. Jeremy, I forget how you say his last, Coalition. It's not right, but whatever. Don't at me about it. But he's got the permanent tag, which I thought was really weird.
Really?
But, yeah, Stan Bowman has given him said he's our guy.
Okay.
Which
And Hitch is interim as well, though,
yes,
right?
and Ken Hitchcock now, he's an interim guy, and it's in his backyard, so it makes sense.
Yeah. He's
but,
just passing.
So there you go. There's your Central Intelligence brief for the week. And we will, last but not least, fire away with our Jersey segment.
Here to start the third period. What team is this? It's not Team USA. Well, yes, it is. They've got on new uniforms. They're wearing the logo of the Duck. I've never seen this before.
So, last week, our jerseys, you can guess, we had the 70s. This week, we're going to talk about the Cooperall era of the 80s. And we're going to kind of highlight some of our best, our favorites, some of our least favorites that were introduced during the 80s. Not necessarily what was worn during the time, but was introduced during this time. And kind of what we were just talking about here off air was there wasn't a lot of change in the NHL during this time. A lot of similar styles, but we can probably find some similar things that we did like and what we're probably not going to like. But what do you want to lead us off with?
I'm on your side. I'm on the but it's different because it's Packer week.
Wayne Gretzky was traded to Los Angeles in 1988, and that brought with the wonderful silver and black jerseys for the Kings.
That was the first thing I wrote down.
Yep. So the 4 and blue ones were good jerseys, and we certainly don't hate on those, but the black and silver ones were just really top. One of my favorite jerseys
ever.
Yeah, for sure. Another one that I really like that was introduced in the 80s, kind of mentioned to it a little bit, the Atlanta Flames, who like the 70s, well, they moved to Calgary in 1980, and basically kept the same design. I think the Calgary Flaming Sea looks even better than the Atlanta one did. So I think that was a nice jersey that was kind of debuted in the 80s, even though it was pretty much already existed. They just stole it from Atlanta, but I think that was a good look. And for my third one, the Flying Skate. Vancouver replaced the disgusting V jerseys with the
that disgusting V.
With the beautiful Flying Skate. And I know you're a fan of it because of its hideousness, but the Flying Skate was definitely an upgrade over the V jerseys.
I'm totally going to fire that in as the title of this show, and people are going to be like, what is this? What kind of PG show is this? Well, you hit 2 out of the 3 I had for the best that were introduced during the era, which was the Kings, which is one of the best in the history of the league, and I still have yet to get one in my personal collection, and it'll forever be on my want list. Christmas is coming up. But the Flag Skate as well, that's just a timeless classic, and I have an ugly sweater with the Flying Skate. I think I alluded to that in an earlier podcast. But and then the third one I had on the list, I'm probably a little bit biased, but introduced in this era was the Minnesota North Stars home uniform, the white jersey that had the black trim right on the sleeve, and then at the base of the jersey at the waist. And it didn't get incorporated until later on in the decade in the road uniform, but I believe that's the best North Stars home uniform they ever had.
I would agree with that.
I have one.
Yeah.
It was great, and is a sigh for you, Tom Schreier. But it's just so sad looking at the jersey history of the North Stars. And now this is what we have. That's what we have now. Anyway, so those are my three favorite that were introduced during this time, and then I did highlight a couple that I didn't like. So the Colorado Rockies, we mentioned them in the last show. They moved to New Jersey, and they became the New Jersey Devils. Well, the New Jersey Devils had that rather not good-looking red and green mash. They eventually switched in the 90s to red and black, which was a good move, but I'm not a fan of the red and green.
It's funny saying that on this podcast, but yeah, I'm not either. I don't like it. I don't know why, and I know that the red and green has been a big hit to the point where the Jersey Devils are bringing them back this year.
It's just, for me, it's not necessarily like a wild thing, but like the New Jersey Devils. You don't associate devils with red and green.
Yeah, that's true. It's Christmas. And yeah, no, yeah. I'm with you on that. It does make a lot of sense to have a Devil team without black in it. And, I mean, red certainly, but where did the green come from? I know it's the Garden State, but that shouldn't have anything to do with it.
Actually, I'm gonna go back. NHL Uniform Database has always good explanations. But,
they do.
Yeah, no, it doesn't really. The crest is great. The NJ with the Devil. That's a great. It still stands, but. Then the other one I have was introduced in, this is going to highlight the era-specific part of this, was the 1982-1983 Philadelphia Flyers.
Yes.
There's a lot of things unpacked here, but they moved away from that old-school look that they had. They added a lot more black trim to the jersey. Which they've since come back to, that they went away from in 82. But then they have the Cooperalls, black Cooperalls.
And the Whalers followed suit.
Yep, which
later.
Just put the touching stamp on this not good-looking uniform to me.
Yeah. I'm with you. The Cooperalls were weird. It's not that... Not that guys don't wear them playing adult hockey and all that kind of jazz, and it's kind of a funny, afterthought, but full long pants on a hockey rink it just looks weird, it'd be like watching basketball or football and seeing somebody wearing long pants. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, and certainly people have played football wearing long sweatpants or basketball wearing sweatpants before, but it's just a weird look professionally.
Show somebody Cooperalls like I did for the first time.
Yeah, it's not a good look, right? And the reason why they were outlawed was because it was a safety hazard. Because the players ended up basically skittering around the ice all the time because there was so little resistance to their pants now that they basically slid for miles as soon as they were off their skates. And so just all in all, that's what you get in the late 70s, early 80s. You get some swings and misses on some things fashion-wise, and Cooperalls were done.
Yeah, but other than that, kind of an otherwise kind of a plain period of the 80s, but don't worry, the next decade is...
next week's exciting.
Oh, man, we're going to have committee meetings on this to narrow the field.
I know, right? This is going to be the toughest three best and three worst.
To find three good and three bad. I didn't even find three bad this week. I only had two bad.
Well,
that's how bland this era was.
Maybe you didn't catch. In 1983, the Blues decided to add the word blues to the front of their jersey.
I did see that. It didn't cross my mind to put that on, but that wasn't a good look.
But, to your point, this wasn't a good look. It was like, what, people don't know what your team name is? What the hell? Like, it was kind of like the Rangers thing last week, where it's like, those Rangers jerseys that they came out with in the 70s for 2 seasons were vile and disgusting, but you saw them and you're just kind of like, why? Why did you do that?
The Blues should just bring those back now, since they are actually vile and disgusting.
Also, one other thing to note, the All-Star Game jerseys in this era were absolutely delightful.
They were very spot on.
They were definitely great. It's where you got the Campbell and the Whales going diagonally across the jerseys. And then also later in the decade, they did just the plain NHL Shield on a very simple jersey with some stars. It looked very good.
Although I will give you, the 82 uniforms was not one of the better ones. And I think I did an All-Star Game jersey post a year ago or 2 years ago on Zone Coverage. But
all the stars.
All the stars
Yeah,
and just the orange and black and white. It just, that was not a good, but they made up for it the rest of the decade.
Yeah, the rest of the decade was great. Don't look at 1982, but the rest of the decade was great for
And this just further just drives a stake in our jersey-loving hearts of how terrible and bland the All-Star Game jerseys have become.
I feel like they were good in the 80s. They were great. Very classic looks. In the 90s, they did some interesting stuff, but it was still kind of fun, and you could kind of get behind it a little bit. And then basically after the Wild hosted the All-Star Game, it's been just diarrhea since then. It's been awful. It's absolutely awful.
So this is what's weird, and this is what I also love, is for just 1 year, the NHL decided to just have the host team's colors as the uniforms, which also coincided with the fact that it was here in Minnesota in 2004. Ever before and since, they just had kind of a generic color scheme.
Well, no, they do that now with the whole 4 division thing. They do use the home team's colors. But it looks different because there's 4 teams. So they do use the home team colors now, but it's very different looking because there's 4 teams.
I apologize. 2009 in Montreal, they did have the Canadiens color scheme, but it looked like puke. I pity Columbus for that neon garbage they had. Like the 2017 one at Los Angeles was to them, but where the hell was the 2018? It was in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, they use black, blue, silver, and white. So, I mean, I don't know. It's just... blah. Yeah, blah is right. Absolutely.
Anyway. Alright. That's it. Let's go home.
Sounds good.
So that will wrap it up for us. Again, you can find Ben and I on Twitter at Ben Remington, at Giles Hurl. Our podcast has a Twitter account at JTG Wild Podcast. We do also have a YouTube channel. We do pre- and post-game videos. Search Giles and the Goalie on YouTube. Find us otherwise. Find Production, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, blah, blah, blah. Again, we do write for a website called Zone Coverage. If you do go to zonecoverage.com/subscribe, punch in the promo code GATG20, you will get a year's subscription to zonecoverage.com for $20. Help support not only this show to keep us going, but all the other great writers and podcasts as part of the network as well. And so, that will wrap it up for this edition. So check back in next week. And I do want to apologize for last week. Last week was episode 169. So we do have to rectify the fact that was a not-so-nice podcast and the fact that we didn't acknowledge that the number of episodes was very nice. So apologies for that. And on that note, we'll check back in next week.
Later.
It's not resiliency. You're making it sound like we're good. That's all. I'm done.